Then on Sports Central, we go over our next team prediction of this offseason, and it's going to be over the Oklahoma Sooners. A team that went 6-7 overall in the 2022 season. Definitely a down season for Oklahoma in comparison to where they usually are, but how this team being 2023 and why I think this team could definitely return to national contention in the 2023 season is what we'll be talking about here today. We'll be analyzing this team and predicting their schedule game by game in this video. Let's get started with a quick recap of 2022. Once again, a disappointing season. But considering the first-year head coach, Brent Venables, and everything, I guess it makes sense for it to be kind of a down season, but still a disappointment no matter what you say about it. But started the season on a high note, 3-0. They beat UTEP, beat Kent State, and then beat Nebraska on the road, 49-14. I mean, things were looking really good for this team heading into Week 4 against K-State, which that was kind of the start of the downfall of this team, losing to K-State there 41-34. I mean, in retrospect, that wasn't even that bad of a loss, but it's just what followed that loss that was terrible. They lost to TCU 55-24 and then got shut out against Texas 49-0. That was just an ugly loss there, and that's really where this team was at rock bottom. There was after that Texas loss in Dallas, but after that things got better. They beat Kansas 52-42. I mean, allowed 42 points to the Jayhawks, but still got it done. And they were 4-3 heading into the bye week. Came back, beat Iowa State 27-13, and then they had three close losses here at the end of the regular season. Lost to Baylor, West Virginia, and Texas Tech, all by 3 points. The Texas Tech game went into overtime, and it was a loss in a shootout, 51-48. So definitely a lot of higher scoring games for the Sooners last season. They also beat Oklahoma State down the stretch 20-13. That was an impressive win. But it turns out that was their last win, and that was their only win in their last 5 games. So yeah, this team, they did down the stretch struggle according to the wins and losses, but I would say this team definitely improved over the course of 2023. You look at those 2 losses in particular against TCU and Texas, those 2 were ugly. And that was really where this team was at rock bottom. And after that, especially after that Texas loss 49-0, this team did improve down the stretch. And it does bring some promise, seeing as we look forward to 2023, even though, yeah, they took 4 really close losses. All 4 of their last 5 games were losses by 3 points each. So this team was competitive. And against Florida State, you look at the Cheez-It Bowl there, Florida State at that point in the season was hot. And for Oklahoma to hang in there, keep it a close game against a talented Florida State team that was playing really well at that point in the season. I mean, that was impressive what the Sooners did there, and they very much could have won that game. It was just another close loss. So final record was 6-7, but this team definitely could have been better than that record showed last season. I mean, this team played like an 8-win team. I mean, yeah, they had a couple of terrible losses, but otherwise this team shows promise as we look forward to 2023, and let's do that next. Your roster preview heading into the season. Dillon Gabriel's coming back, which last season he was underwhelming at times, but he definitely, I think, with some experience with the Sooners now, that's going to be huge as we look forward to 2023. He put up 3,100 yards, 25 touchdowns, over 6 interceptions, a 63% completion rate. Not a bad stat line for him last season, even though he was a bit inconsistent at times. You look at the backfield, Eric Gray is gone, but you got Javante Barnes coming back. Obviously, Eric Gray is going to be a tough loss. Last season, he put up nearly 1,600 yards of offense, 11 touchdowns. But Javante Barnes, he put up over 500 yards himself and 5 touchdowns. So the backfield was excellent last season. You also got Dillon Gabriel, who can run as well. I mean, he put up just over 300 rushing yards last season, 6 touchdowns for him. So he is able to run as well. So backfield looks good. The receiving core, you do lose Marvin Mims and Braden Willis. Your top 2 in the receiving core there, so that is something to keep in mind. But you got your second wideout and your third wideout coming back in Jaleel Farouk and then Drake Stoops. And honestly, for this team in general, the recruiting is good enough. I mean, this team has got depth, and even though they're losing some talent here with Eric Gray especially, and you could say your top 2 receivers and Marvin Mims and Braden Willis, I mean, this team has got excellent depth, and with Dillon Gabriel gaining experience, I think things are going to be okay for this team despite some of those key losses. For the Sooners, they do lose 2 on the O-line, 2 defensive linemen, 1 linebacker, and then 3 in the secondary. So defensively, there's a few losses as well. But yeah, so I mean, there's going to be some uncertainty here for the Sooners. You consider some of the talent they're losing, but there is definite potential on this team. You look at the improvement from last season, the recruiting on this team, the depth, everything looks really good, I would say, for this team heading into the upcoming season, despite there will be a few changes But does this team return to contention in 2023? I think this team is definitely going to be better in 2023 as far as the record's going to show. Is this team a big college football playoff contender? I don't know about that quite yet, just based on how this team. I mean, you got to remember this was a 6-7 team this last season, and I think Brent Venables is an excellent coach. Yeah, things were not quite as good in 2022 as they usually are, but I think as we look forward to 2023, those things will improve. And yeah, there's potential on this team as we look forward to 2023. Will they return to contention? I think so. Will they return to the college football playoff? I don't know about that one quite yet. But that said, looking at the transfer portal and recruiting now, you got Theo Weiss, who is off to Missouri, losing him, but I'm not really too concerned about that loss, especially when you got Andrel Anthony coming in from Michigan, who definitely could have an immediate impact. He's already listed as a wide receiver 1 on the depth chart. Austin Stogner is as well at tight end. He's a familiar name. He was off to South Carolina from Oklahoma, but he's coming back. He left with Spencer Rattler, but looks like he's coming back to the Sooners, so expect him to have an immediate impact as well. We'll see what he can do. Blake Smith is coming in from Texas A&M. Walter Roos and Caleb Schaefer, both of them definitely going to have immediate impacts. I mean, Walter Roos especially, he is one of the best offensive linemen in the country. Rondell, both really defensive linemen coming in from Wake Forest, and Devin Sears is coming in from Texas State. Otherwise, Jacob Lacey, defensive lineman, he's coming in from Notre Dame. Trace Ford, defensive lineman, coming in from OSU. So, I mean, the transfer portal has overall been great for the Sooners. You do lose a couple, though, here in edge rusher Clayton Smith, Josh Ellison, defensive lineman as well. You bring in Dasan McCullough, linebacker from Indiana. You lose Ugwobu, linebacker off to Houston. Reggie Pearson Jr., safety, is coming in from Texas Tech. And Kendall Dennis is off to South Florida. Recruiting-wise, things have been great as well. This team is 4th in the country, 2nd in the Big 12. That's obviously the kind of recruiting stats that you want to see, especially when you're considering this is more than likely the Sooners' last season in the Big 12. You're off to the SEC, which is an elite recruiting conference. I mean, look at the top 10, top 15 teams in the nation when it comes to recruiting. More than likely, 8 or 9 of them are always going to be SEC, maybe even more than that. And so for Oklahoma, that's obviously crucial to have an excellent recruiting class, and this team has got exactly that. 3 5-stars coming in and 14 4-stars. This team is at a 9 out of 10 on my future forecast meter. I think the future is bright. Now, I am cautiously optimistic about the Sooners. I do think moving to the SEC, I mean, the SEC is obviously an elite conference in college football. It is better than the Big 12 is. And so you're moving into a conference where it's just going to be brutal week in, week out, especially in the conference slate. But despite all of that, with the recruiting and everything, and Brent Venables, I still really believe in him as a head coach. I think the future is bright for this team, and they're still going to remain a contender for years to come, especially with things looking the way that they are. And that said, let's look at the schedule now. Looking forward to 2023. Got Arkansas State in week 1, SMU in week 2, then off to Tulsa for week 3. And then you open up the Big 12 slate against Cincinnati, one of the Big 12 newcomers. In fact, you're playing multiple of the new Big 12 teams here. You got Cincinnati, you got UCF down the road, and then BYU as well. So you're not playing Houston. That's the one team that's new to the conference that you're not playing. We got to play 3 out of the 4, which honestly I'd say is maybe a benefit to you guys. But yeah, Tulsa on the road, Cincinnati on the road, Iowa State at home, then Texas and Dallas. You got them there. That's going to be a huge one on October 7th. Then your bye week, and then you got UCF coming to town, Kansas on the road, Oklahoma State on the road to start November, West Virginia at home, BYU on the road, and then TCU at home to finish out the regular season. So looking at your first 4 games here, September, early part of the season, I mean, it is nice to have your first 2 games at home here. Both games very winnable. I think you do exactly that. You take care of both of them, and you go to Tulsa, a smaller or a quieter environment, definitely a sleepy place to play. But I think you take care of them, no problem. Not really too concerned about them. So you should be 3-0, no problem, heading into Cincinnati, which is a big game. First Big 12 game for Cincinnati. Yes, that is the first Big 12 game that Cincinnati is going to play. And so that's a huge game for them. I do expect them to be a solid team in 2023. I mean, it's going to be interesting to see how these new Big 12 teams do in the conference. But on the road, it's going to be definitely, I can imagine, a loud environment, tough place to play. I do think it's a close game, but you get it done, and you're 4-0 to start this season. Then you get Iowa State. I think they're going to be one of the worst teams in the conference. There's just not much optimism I have for them. So you take care of them, you're 5-0. to start off the season. Then you got Texas. And Texas next season might just be my Big 12 favorite. You consider the talent on that team, everything. I mean, I think it's going to be Texas and Oklahoma towards the top. The two teams that are more than likely leaving the Big 12 after this season are going to be dueling it out at the top for the Big 12. And, I mean, you're going to have a couple other teams. I mean, K-State should be up there as well. I mean, TCU maybe, but I do expect them to fall off a decent amount. I mean, so the Big 12, it's definitely wide open as we look forward to 2023, and I do have Texas beating Oklahoma there. It's not going to be ugly like it was last season. I think Oklahoma keeps it a close game, and it's going to be back and forth, but the Longhorns steal a win off of the Sooners in the end. You come back after your bye week, you beat UCF and Kansas. Kansas being a road game. Both games kind of close, I do think, but I could get it done in both. Kansas, Kansas has given Oklahoma a little bit of trouble the past couple of years, keeping it close, but I still think he beat Kansas. It's just been so long since the Jayhawks have been able to get it done, and they could be decent once they get in 2023 for their standards. At least being decent is getting up to 5-6 wins. Getting to a bowl game is almost a miracle for them, but yeah, I do think you take care of Kansas to get the win there. So you're 7-1 heading into November. Oklahoma State on the road. This is a tougher one as well. I don't think Oklahoma State's even going to be that good, but I do think, I think the Sooners will be the more talented team there, but going on the road, I do think Oklahoma State kind of steals a win off you there. It's a winnable game, but on the road, I'm going to pick Oklahoma State. Come back, you got West Virginia, easy win there. And then BYU and TCU to finish out the season. BYU, I really don't expect to be too good. I mean, that's a team that has been pretty good the last few years, but I do think they fall off a decent amount. No more Jaren Hall. That's a team with a little bit of uncertainty as we look forward to 2023. So you beat BYU on the road, then you come back against TCU. Once again, I do think TCU is going to have a similar trend. If you remember Baylor back in 2021, a big national contender, they were excellent. And they got to a New Year's Six bowl, and I think they won it as well. Then they were 6-6 last season. TCU last year got to the college football playoff, made it to the national championship. I don't know if TCU is going to go 6-6, but I really don't think they're going to be at the same level as they were last season. So I'm going to say you beat them as well. So you're 10-2 on the season. I expect a successful season up here for the Sooners. Definitely a bounce back year, and I can see them being a big contender in the Big 12. Now, if you're talking nationally, college football playoff, I do think this team is going to take a loss or two somewhere down the stretch. That's going to be kind of confusing. In that case, I've got it to be that Oklahoma State game. It's on the road at a tough place to play. But, I do think the Sooners, this is a team with talent to go all the way to the college football playoff. I just think this team still isn't quite to that level yet. Maybe in 2024 we could see that team and see this team get to that elite level, but I just don't know if it's going to happen quite yet in 2022. But your ceiling is still 12-0 on the range. I do think this team has got, they got the talent to go undefeated. I just don't think it happens, and I've got this team at a 10-2 on the prediction. The floor is 7-5. That's the worst possible record that Oklahoma could have next season. 7-5 is very unlikely, but I've got this team at least in 8-4. But the floor, just in case, if it's just a disaster of a season, will be 7-5. And if this team does go 7-5, Brent Venables will more than likely be on the hot seat. That's 2 straight seasons of just bad football for Oklahoma. But I've got this team at 10-2. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below on the Sooners. And I appreciate you guys all watching as always. Stay tuned for more from All Sports Central. Catch you on the next one.